FNAF is a series that has been around for a decade now, and in that time there has been many fan projects and works that have been made to express the community's love for the series. Everything from art, music, theory videos, and games are just so cool to see and strengthen the bond I have with this community. And there's so much of it that there's always more things I've never heard of or haven't checked out that I can stumble upon anytime and get invested into. Many of these are really high quality too, sometimes even doing things and expressing concepts better than the official games, exploring the world of FNAF more and fleshing out characters and settings that greatly are in need of it all. But unfortunately, due to being fan projects, a lot of them get shoved under the rug or not get as much attention as they clearly deserve for all the effort put in. And I can think of a fan animated series on YouTube that falls victim to this very easily. That being the Interviewed series, an original series inspired by a FNAF story made by the YouTuber JJims, with the oldest installment dating back to 5 years ago. Although this series is in fact a bit popular, I generally think it doesn't get nearly enough love. Sometimes I try to find a review or retrospective of the series, but every time my search runs dry with only things like reaction videos, which is fine, but it's not enough to satisfy a man-child like me. So that's why I feel the need to make this video. Not only to give the fans of the series some more content to sink their teeth into, but also allow myself to just rant and give credit to JJims for all the hard work they put into this series. So yeah, this is going to be my summary and review of The Interviewed. If you haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend you go watch it and don't get spoiled by all the things I'm going to say. I really want this series to get supported more and get more attention. The beginning episodes of this series has a very noticeable and easy digestible concept behind it all, and that is to interview characters from FNAF series. What else did you expect? This is a formula that is reused constantly in the start, and it's smart and a fine way to introduce the versions of these characters we'll soon learn to love. Episode 1. An interview with Springtrap. We're sat in front of the man behind the slaughter himself, and he fully just admits to killing those kids, to slaughtering people, and has no regrets according to him. He talks about what it's like to live in the suit, how he doesn't even remember life before he was trapped, and how it's even difficult to do simple things like breathing. For a brief moment too, the mechanisms go off in the suit, which is both really creepy and amazing for the story's world building. This isn't just a man in a random bunny costume who happened to kill kids. No, this was a robot that was designed to entertain children, and that is perfectly normal for this. It looks very creepy, but you gotta understand, that would totally happen. This already had me hooked in the first episode. This was a concept and idea that I never even thought about, and to see it in this was so fascinating. But it was over too soon, for when the suit stopped doing its little dance, Springtrap leaped at the guard and supposedly killed him. I greatly appreciate this first episode. It already sets down a groundwork for what to expect going onwards, and shows us when we're getting into it, just how the characters are going to be portrayed, and I love that. But how could this continue? Well, next episode is an interview with Innard, which opens up with a shine of a flashlight spreading across a chained ceiling, with the presented animatronic hanging from above. They slowly make their way down, claiming they've been waiting for us, and sit in their seat. I already massively appreciate the attention to detail when it comes to Innard's frustration. The twitches of anger and just the way they talk, it's just so perfect for an introduction to the character. It makes them seem so threatening and menacing. The interview continues with Innard comparing themselves to that of a puzzle that's incomplete, and apart from the inconsistent pronouns they refer to themselves in this episode, I think it's an appropriate metaphor, and one that we can see come true over the series' progression. Though, after a threat is made by Innard and it's made very clear, he retreats back to their ceiling chains and gives us a good old stare, ending the episode. Hey, so actually, apparently the interview with Innard episode was not the actual second episode to the series, and instead the second one was an interview with Golden Freddy. The reason I missed it initially was because for some reason it's not in the official playlist on JJim's channel, and is kinda hidden, but I have a sneaky suspicion the reason why is because it's not canon. This video depicts Golden Freddy much differently than how they're properly portrayed in the rest of the show, so I can easily see a simple retcon just be the case. Nonetheless, I want to still talk about it, mainly because I think it's bad. The videos on Innard and Springtrap, in my opinion, are phenomenal and do a great job at making these characters feel real while also sticking to what makes them interesting. But not only does Golden Freddy not do this in this episode, but also it just straight up just makes them show their grippers. Like, what is this? This isn't Golden Freddy. They're not some huge threatening monster. They're a limp, empty animatronic suit desperate to get revenge on the man who killed them. Nothing makes sense for the character in this episode, and that's why I think it was taken off the playlist. Later on in the series, we see a much more well-written version of Golden Freddy, and I don't want to spoil too much yet, but you can blatantly see the differences and positive rework that was done. Okay, so the next episode is an interview with Lefty, and this one, it's not the best either, and I don't understand why. Similar to the Missing Golden Freddy episode, an interview with Lefty doesn't make sense. Her portrayal is made to be clumsy and stupid, ruining any suspense the other tapes might have built up. And with the assistance of poor animation and lack of proper voice acting like the other episodes, instead just lazily stripping audio and lines from games, this episode comes across as some kind of joke. Lefty later in the series, just like Golden Freddy, is much different and makes me question why she started off so flawed in the first place. And to be honest, the worst, but also unfortunately the best part of this episode is the ending. All of a sudden things get serious when we cut away to Lefty outside of her room. She pulls a lever and opens a bunch of doors, and the video ends wonderfully with this shot. That was actually really cool and is the beginning of when the series actually starts becoming something fascinating. But why'd you have to put it at the end of a joke video? I don't know, this just seems like nitpicking, but like, I'm sorry, I just personally do not like coming back to this video because it just feels so lazy. Though it does get better after this, I promise. But now on to the episode that changed the interviewed series forever. An interview with Bonnie. The episode opens up on the hallway full of doors as seen at the end of the last episode, but they're still closed. A quick walk shows us, the viewer, that in each room is another animatronic locked up, each being interviewed all at the same time. Inevitably, we make it to ours, and inside is Nightmare Bonnie. Now you may be thinking, why is Nightmare Bonnie here? According to what we know in the actual games, they're most likely not real animatronics and rather hallucinations of some sort. Well, this show gives them a much different story, what I find so interesting. In this alternate universe, the Nightmare animatronics are real robots, just really, really old ones. Ones that had been dealing with corrosion and tearing apart for years and years and years. And they're the oldest characters ever. Nightmare Bonnie casually talks about this and even shares some personal information about his habits. He's depicted as some sadistic jokester and discusses his killing so loosely and nonchalantly, and as he does so, he twitches and fiddles with his decaying hands. I love this personification. This is a scenario where I feel such characterization is appropriate and done extremely well. Everything from his confidence to how he makes fun of the interviewer's tactics is amazing and really makes Nightmare Bonnie shine. The end of the episode draws near and Bonnie loses his patience. He stands up and flips the table in front of him only to dig his claws through the man and throw him to the ground. Then the doors open once more, in response to Lefty switching the lever, I presume. The video ends with the sirens blaring as gunshots are heard in the distance, until a quiet shush stops it all. Wow, that was cool! It just adds so much more mystery and it only gets better and better. I can't wait to see what happens next. The next episode is a good one, and it opens in a much different scenario. We see a man, shrouded in darkness, being interviewed for some kind of job. The man, in an attempt to get hired, calls himself things like a practical or hard worker. Eventually, after some build-up, claims that when he gets put down, he always comes back. And as soon as you come to the realization of who this is, we cut to a very moment where Springtrap got himself spring-locked. This is an interview with Afton. Time cuts back to modern day, and after a bit more introduction, we're back at the facility keeping hold of the animatronics. Back at the time before the breakout, before all the animatronics were let loose. Once more, we see that long hallway with locked doors all the way down it, and within one, Innard just finished their interview. The very one we see all the way back in episode 2. The interviewers leave, and leaving Innard to reside on their chain ceiling just like the ending of the very video. The door closes, and almost immediately, Innard notices a vent nearby. That's something they can use. Something to use to escape, or get into another room. More time passes by, and we're brought back to Springtrap in his interview, the one that played in episode 1. But this time it doesn't cut. Instead, we get to see what happens, and the guard doesn't die. They start twitching and moving erratically, making strange chain-like robotic noises, and when you look and see the sharp teeth that shine from inside their mouth, you realize that that's Innard. In their time, they managed to find someone to possess, control from the inside, and make their way into Afton's room. It's a little weird when you think about it, because wouldn't they need a scooper to do all that? But nonetheless, it's a cool reveal, and a really fascinating nod back to the games. They grab Afton and throw them out of his confinement, properly revealing themselves in the process as the doors open and more animatronics come to the scene. Innard towers over his body, mocking his words alongside the other souls there, and before the video ends, before everything cuts to black once more, a faint sound of a match is heard. I really appreciate this episode. I know I say that a lot, but this one really is like the point where everything just changes. The mood is changing, the scenarios are changing. It's not just interviews anymore. Sure, every episode is legally obligated to have an interview because, well, the title, but this is a changing point. Things are getting more serious. The next episode is an interview with Bonnie. Yeah, again. Really couldn't have thought of any other character? I mean, there's like a billion of them. Anyways, the video opens right after how the last one ended, the building burning as the fire spreads through the halls. It's made clear that Springtrap, along with others, have escaped the facility during this disaster, leaving others trapped inside, burning. And as the camera zooms in on a desperate withered Bonnie, we get another flashback to before this all happened. We see Bonnie getting interviewed just like the rest of the animatronics did previously. He gets to ask questions like how he was made and what caused his death, which Bonnie is obviously uncomfortable answering as he twitches and emits sparks of anger and frustration, especially when he's told Afton is in the same building as him. As the interview continues, it's made abundantly clear by Bonnie's statements that these animatronics got themselves taken in on purpose, only here to get revenge on the man who killed them all those years ago. And as the doors open and the lights go out, Bonnie actually spares the interviewer, keeping him alive as long as he lets him go kill Afton. But we know that doesn't work out. Cutting back to the present, with the burning and everything, Bonnie actually gets saved by the interviewer, extinguishing the flames and even starting a truce with him and the chief of the whole operation. It's not really made too clear, but the chief wants Springtrap just as much as the animatronics do. He desires to learn from his brilliance and is fascinated by the whole concept of bringing things to life. Speaking of, where is Springtrap? Well, we cut to Springtrap running through a nearby forest with the nightmare animatronics behind him in pursuit. He tries to make distance, but unfortunately all that time spent down in the sister location bunker working on robots and stuff didn't really translate to any athletic abilities, and he totally gets wiped out by Nightmare Bonnie. Like, dude. Bro even calls him a frail old man. Like, this is not looking good for you, Afton. Anyways, the gems, or the people behind the facility the animatronics were at, catch up to them, and there's a bit of a back and forth until we see that Innard had once again jumped into some dude's body and started controlling them, and in an attempt to shoot Afton and end everything, somehow they managed to not only miss terribly, but also blow up a helicopter. Innard, I'm taking away your people's privileges. You cannot do this anymore. The episode ends with a slow zoom out of the crash site as a familiar face watches from the sidelines. Golden Freddy is back, and they're actually going to be good this time. Now, I just want to say that from this point forward, this is when the quality gets really, really good. And I'm talking like animation's better, I'm talking like music is better. This, from here on forward, the next couple episodes, they are my absolute favorites. Every single one of them just goes so hard, and like, just proves that this needs more attention. If you thought these earlier videos I was talking about were good, no, they're not the reason I love this series so much, even though I do love them. The reason I love this series so much literally originates from the next episode we're going to talk about, so I just need to get into that, okay? Like, literally the whole reason I know about this series is from the next episode, so let's just cut to it, okay? Okay, what's up next? An interview with Foxy. Yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. I love this episode. There's so many great things about it, but for starters, it has a banger of an intro. Many videos in this series do have intros to them, but they're never really noteworthy or interesting. Well, not only is this one very interesting, but it just has such a good theme in the background with amazing visuals and already reminds me of how talented this creator is. It also strangely depicts what I can only assume was the day William Afton took the life of the person who possesses the puppets. The soul inside Lefty, presumably. So, that's cool. But moving on from killer intros, let's just get into the actual episode. So, we get to see the GEMS facility again in ruin after the whole security breach. And a lot of workers are sent back to recover any animatronics that may have been left there, any parts. But unfortunately, they all get jumped by Foxy and accidentally blow the place up even more, which, like, what is with this show and blowing stuff up? Anyways, it's not really revealed until a little later in the episode, but those characters who were left behind in the building, especially when it blew up, all burned and had their animatronic bound bodies destroyed, leaving them as ghostly recreations of their former selves, as phantoms. Even without a body to host, their souls cannot rest, and I love this concept because not only does it give an in-universe reason for the phantom animatronics to exist, but it gives these characters a much greater vendetta against Afton. Even after all this pain they go through, they still can't rest until they get their revenge. In the next scene, we see where Springtrap ended up after the whole thing that happened in the woods. Chained up and finally presented in a vulnerable light, William Afton is face to face with all his creations as they exclaim their need to kill him once and for all. But he begins to laugh in their faces, stating that he's heard that many times before. He always finds a way to come back after all. And as Lefty reaches out her mechanical glowing hand with power and agony, his eyes widen in anticipation, only for it to all be stopped by the one soul Afton should have never killed. Golden Freddy, or just Cassidy, stops what Lefty is trying to do. From the shadows, they've always been watching, calculating every last detail about their killer, and in this moment they realize something. This is exactly what he wants. He wants it all to end. Afton desires the sweet relief of death after all these years, and with the subtle eye roll on his behalf, it's all confirmed. This reasonably begins a disagreement among the animatronics. On one hand, Cassidy along with the Phantoms I mentioned earlier believe that Afton shouldn't be allowed to die, shouldn't be allowed to feel a sense of relief after what he's done, while the others just want to end it all already and finally be set free, put to rest. Does this remind you of anything? Well, this show is literally reimagining the story of FNAF Ultimate Custom Night as Cassidy drives himself deeper and deeper into the obsession over their killer. And I just love this connection. Once again, it really shows how much passion and thought is put into this series, and like, that's so cool! Like, come on, that's cool. This is so... whatever. All of this conflict and arguing builds up until finally, this happens.
Is all this really worth it? I understand your anger, but...
If you did, you wouldn't be killing him so soon.
This scene is one of my favorite pieces of FNAF anything. Heck, this show is one of my favorite pieces of FNAF anything. Why aren't enough people talking about this? I'm sorry, I'm getting a bit ahead of myself, but we still have much more to go. Anywho, remember those military people guys again? Yeah, they're back, and they ambushed the building they're all in. Cassidy, along with the Phantoms and Springtrap, all vanished while the others left behind scrambled to take control of the situation. We get the pleasure of checking out with Chief and Good Bloke once again, and we're reminded of the truce that was made. A select few of the animatronics, mainly Withered Bonnie, Innard, and some of the toys, team up with them once again, while the Nightmares and Lefty go on their own quests to find them in the woods. Wait, but where in the woods this time exactly? Well, I'm happy you asked, because of course it's nowhere else than the literal FNAF 4 house. What? When I first saw this reveal, I actually screamed, only for me to be instantly disappointed, noticing that this was the end of the episode. God, what a good one. Like, the actual chills I got when I first watched this. Oh my gosh, and it keeps getting better and better too. Now, the next episode, the Remnant Trials, is a different kind of installment of the series. It still has interviews, more than usual actually, but this one takes place at a point in time that was way before anything else. It's kind of here to give a prequel to everything, but also kind of gives off like major FNAF VHS vibes, which I do not hate. In fact, I think it might be safe to say that this episode, other than the other installments in the series, is one of my absolute favorites, but that's basically a given once you actually see or hear what goes down in this episode. You see, the video opens up as an actual recording by an unnamed character, but by the voice and the obvious purple guy on the screen, we can instantly figure out that this is supposed to be William Afton, before he got spring-locked. Almost instantly, he starts yapping about remnants, and explaining to the audience what it is. A substance that enables us life into things and is commonly referred to as someone's soul. He explains that recently at the time, through some tragic events, hint hint nudge nudge, he has discovered that remnant, if properly extracted and harnessed, could possibly bring the gift of life to anything, with the cost of the initial person's life obviously. He very quickly gets to the point and begins testing his very hypothesis on the Funtime animatronics, more specifically starting with Funtime Foxy. During the testing we learned that remnant is tied to memory, and the more that you insert into a subject, the more they're supposed to remember their past. With Foxy, Afton chose to only use 30% of remnant capacity. We see them come to life before our eyes, a truly sickening scene only for them to just get interviewed. We learn that although they can't remember their own name, they do know that they were someone else before this life. Someone who was tragically murdered. The interview continues until it seems Afton has had enough of Foxy's attitude against him, and shocks them, powering them off or possibly just stunning them for a while. He quickly moves on to his next test, Ballora, this time choosing to inject her with 80% of remnant capacity, to see what she remembers. But when she springs to life, she refuses to share any details with him, like she's holding some kind of grudge. Inevitably though, Afton gets fed up with her attitude once more, and shocks her. There is this one interesting line that Ballora claims that the last time she trusted someone, it didn't go so well, hinting at the idea that she was Afton's wife, and he is possibly the one who killed her. Now for the next test, Funtime Freddy. He tried to do something different this time and decided to see what would happen if you put a small amount of remnant, only 15% of capacity. He goes through with this procedure, but Funtime Freddy doesn't spring to life. Afton then explains that due to the minimal amount of remnant, although the animatronic was full of life, it didn't get filled with enough power to do anything. Anywho, we move on to the supposed last test of the video, one with Circus Baby. In a desperate attempt to bring his daughter back, Afton loses all professionalism he once had in this scene and fills the robot with 100% remnant capacity, hoping somehow to make her remember everything. Strangely though, it doesn't work. Elizabeth truly believes she is Circus Baby, and sounds even robotic, more than the others who at least had their personalities from their past lives shine through. In a fit of rage, William begins yelling at the animatronic, confused on why nothing was working, only for it to glitch out and break, leaving Afton alone and conflicted.
Circus Baby test. Unsuccessful. She did not, or was unable to, remember. This now concludes the remnant trials. No. We can't stop now. It was working. I just need more time, more trials. I need more subjects.
His evil laughter, alongside the flashes of characters we know and love, paired with such amazing music, just makes this quote-unquote reveal so impactful. But we're not done yet.
Oh, you always act as if you know That's not right.
They really make Innard so cool in this series and just threatening. I don't really know what led up to this point, but knowing this is Test 5, I'm sure we'll learn more about it later in the series. Now let's talk about one of the stranger episodes in the series. One titled The Malhair Virus. This episode, in my opinion, kinda feels out of place. Don't get me wrong, it's a stellar episode having the best visuals I've seen so far in the series, and once again having such an amazing soundtrack that goes unbelievably hard. But it introduces a strange concept, one we are familiar in the FNAF fanbase, but just one I didn't expect to see in this series. And I'm very interested in how it's going to be made into the actual story going on, because, yeah, this is canon. By the way, for those who are confused what the heck a malhair is, it's Glitch Trap. Yeah, this is an interview with Glitch Trap. The episode starts off with a bit of descriptions, claiming that the very being we see in this recording is a self-aware, virus-like creature derived from the remnant of William Afton himself, a non-physical recreation of his personalities and motives. Due to this property of not being, well, real, the only way to communicate with the creature is through linked monitors and audio devices. There are also some warnings given to the viewer at the beginning of the episode. The malware can travel through electrical currents, and that makes it very easy for it to take control of any technology nearby. So a specially made firewall was made to prevent this from ever happening. One that was specifically made by Fazbear Entertainment. That surely won't come back in any way in the end of the episode. An interview starts with him, and we see who this malware character truly is. Like I stated before, this isn't William Afton, but rather a piece of him. A jumbled up mess of all his worst personality traits and artificial intelligence. In order to fit a fraction of his mind into a computer, he had to keep the essentials, as he puts it. The important things. In other words, this is a non-feeling replication of what Afton is, only wanting chaos, control, and torment others. You know, the usual. The interviewer begins asking more questions, like where his physical body is at, and the glitch responds by saying it's 6 feet under piles of rubble, but the malhair explains that they wouldn't really want it due to being mutilated beyond recognition. I believe this AI still thinks his original body is stuck in Fazbear Frights, and by the person asking where it is in the first place alongside this, we can assume this takes place in the past just like the last episode, before everything has happened. As the interview continues, Glitch Trap begins shifting the conversation's focus to the impressive security system in place to prevent him from escaping, calling it almost impossible to breach, only for him to make the innocent man aware of their foolish mistake of letting Fazbear Entertainment design it. So apparently, William Afton himself designed the firewall, so he could easily escape with some tinkering, instantly breaking free and taking control of an unused endo in the area. The malware will return, most likely in a future installment as some sort of twist, which is pretty exciting. This one was a shorter episode, but it's fine because I'm pretty sure it was just made to fill in the gaps between releases. These things do take a while to get made, and people were waiting basically a year for the next installment to get picked up. But eventually they wouldn't have to wait for long, for on Christmas Eve of all days, we were given an interview with Cassidy, the vengeful spirit. After an opening of flashes from the previous point in the timeline, the point where a new conflict emerged, we finally see where Golden Freddy had taken Afton. They calmly ask him a simple starting question, whether or not he can recall the date of April 7th, 1984. Rather than answering though, Afton speaks out in confusion and anger for what's going on. Nonetheless, Cassidy continues, exclaiming how important this day was for her, and how she's not surprised he doesn't remember. She goes on pointing out the obvious guilt Afton holds inside, and as she does so, he falls through a shattered floor beneath him. This is the golden era of the interviewed. In the next scene, we cut to a flashback of Afton before all of this, back to when he was still trapped inside the abandoned Freddy Fazbear's establishment, going crazy and talking to himself, and sporadically bursting out into fits of rage due to such dread and spite. In between all of this though, the Gems Corporation bursts into the building in an attempt to capture Springtrap after so much searching for him, unknowingly giving him exactly what he wanted, what he needed: freedom. He desperately jumps the few guards that were sent in to get him, and completely slaughters them, leaving no survivors. And as he stares into the light, his great escape, It cuts back to the present day. We are presented with the perspective of the men looking for Springtrap once again after Cassidy took him, driving in the woods in pursuit until they get stopped by the Phantoms, who are also looking for the boss, or Major, as they put it. They know he's after Afton, so in order for Cassidy to be unbothered during her interview, they'll have to stop him from getting anywhere close. Strangely though, he isn't found in either of the vehicles as they initially thought he would, and for a small moment, after accidentally meeting up once again, all the animatronics hold a ceasefire to find him. Okay, real quick, this is a bit out of nowhere, but I just want to say that I love how amazing the details are with the lighting and some of these shots, and how it portrays characters. Always viewing the good animatronics in bright, well-lit lighting, while the Phantoms and Cassidy are commonly shrouded in darkness, with the only thing breaking it up being their piercing glow of their eyes, making them feel so evil and untrustworthy, which I adore. It's very well done. But back to the main story, how is Afton holding up? Well, it appears he's still being interviewed by Cassidy, getting reminded of all his sins and questioning his actions, the ones from his past. We then get an answer to the question from the very beginning of the episode, the date of April 7th, 1984. This was the day Afton had took his first victim's life. It was the day where he took Cassidy's life. Afton then snaps back in anger, claiming that there's nothing he can do to bring back her old life. But Cassidy stops him, mocking, claiming that her old life is no longer what she wants. She wants to make him suffer, and she begins to do so by reminding him of his various other sins. For starters, confirming that he did in fact kill his wife, then mocking the reason, mentioning his daughter, someone he had killed with his own creations. Afton reasonably wants her to stop this, end it all, but she continues. And as she mentions Evan, his son who too died by his own creations, we see a blurry and threatening sight of Fredbear, shrouded in darkness, eventually even seeing it bite down on something. Scenes from these games connected to these tragedies flash on the screen as if it's coming back to Afton. Cassidy, enjoying the sight of her killer feeling pain, mocks him more, informing Afton that there's still much more to come. In one of the coolest lines of this entire show, she states that there will not be rest, and she will torture Afton in his own personal purgatory, making sure his suffering prevails for the next many millennia, and until their star burns out. Afton, for a fleeting moment, breaks, begins to sob, only for those cries to form laughter of hysteria, one of sinister nature. Cassidy tries to bring to light Afton's not long-lasting expression of sadness, but is cut off as he leaps in front of her, threatening to kill her once more. Almost instantly, though, Cassidy begins abusing her abilities and uses this opportunity to mock Afton again, using the power she possesses to choke and hold Afton high in the air, claiming that it would be entertaining for him to try and commit such an action. And as she looks up at him, feeling a sense of joy from this encounter, everything stops as the Major comes in and puts Cassidy in her place. The Major shocks Cassidy, leaving her incapable of doing anything for a period of time, unable to use her power, and watches angrily as Major takes Afton away from her. Good Bloke, the detective and interviewer from the Withered Bonnie episode, tries to come with, but Major tells him to stay behind and watch the other animatronics, making sure they don't do anything funny. And as he drives off, the other characters realize what had happened. They yell and express their annoyance with the detective, saying that he was tricked, telling him how he just let them get away with Springtrap. Good Bloke notices his mistake and agrees to help them get him back, with Withered Bonnie, him, and Innard all infiltrating the off-grid facility they had taken him to. And as they disguise and sneak in, the video coming to its end, we discover a strange blueprint of something we never knew about that the Major was building. Something dangerous. Hey, so about the last section. Fun fact for all of you who are still watching, I wrote everything you just heard a long time ago, and originally I was gonna be ending the video there, leaving everything off on a cliffhanger like it was for us, the people watching the show, because that's how we were left off. But luckily for you, there's been a new entry in the series in the meantime, so I have the privilege of ranting about it more. So, yippee for you, yay. Now, this new episode, let's just say it was worth the wait, like, definitely worth the wait. And we had to wait like 2 years, so like, yeah, it was definitely worth it. Is it as good as the interview with Cassidy? Personally, I don't think so. The video had such a fun idea and executed it so brilliantly with the whole FNAF UCN thing. It's going to be hard for anything to pass that. Though, this episode does come very close. Not only does this new episode have fun writing and characterization just like the rest of the series, but manages to build on it, giving other characters like Major and Goodblood much more exciting personalities and motives, and exploring others in interesting and unique ways. I don't want to start gushing about it too much too soon, so let me just pick us up where we left off, okay? This is an interview with Ennard, again, but you don't really care about that right now, do you? No. You probably want to know what that thing was in the blueprint from last episode. Well, don't worry, because we quickly cut to the chase, because in this new video's opening, we get to find out exactly what Major was making. What is it? Well, an Iron Man cosplay, because of course it is. We see as the Gems team surround this man's house, Cody Kenneth, and took all his stuff, which he was being really suspicious about and tried to escape with, but he didn't make it too far before getting caught. It's now that we get revealed what many teachers of this episode have called the Remnant Husk, a weaponized robotic bunny suit worn and controlled by the Major. Its design was directly inspired and made in the image of Springtrap himself, an attempt to make a piece of machinery Its design was directly inspired and made in the image of Springtrap himself, an attempt to make a piece of machinery that challenged Afton's flawed attempts, and even going out of his way to thank Cody for the inspiration in the first place. That's most likely because Cody could actually be a stand-in for Henry in this universe. Either they changed it or just straight up lied to the soldiers around him. Either way, I think it is. But either way, he knows who Afton was and what he became, and begs Major not to follow his footsteps. But to no avail. Major quickly claiming he would know better than to make the same mistakes as Afton, and quickly silencing any more bickering. Okay, so, do you think it's an acceptable time to start ranting? I love this new dark portrayal of Major. We do get to see more of him in a suit later in the episode, and trust me, I have a lot more to say about him, and I'll save some for then. But for now, can we just appreciate this design? This is the first original model for the series, as far as I know, and they did an amazing job with it. Somehow managing to make it feel at home with all the other animatronic designs and fit in, not to mention just looking so threatening no matter how you use them. It's scary in the dark with its piercing white eyes, which I appreciate being button-like, and even intimidating when you put it under various harsh kinds of light. This thing, although operated by a man who's clearly full of himself, is threatening and powerful, proving that whatever he needs Afton for would probably make him unstoppable. But anyways, back to the action. We catch things up with the team once again after all this time, and things pick up where it left off. Luke has found the blueprints and is aware of what Major is trying to do, but as he shares this information with the team, Ennard kinda triggers an alarm system and gets everyone caught, getting himself put in a room ready for questioning. Now, I'm gonna be real honest, the actual interview of this episode is pretty alright, it's not the best, and the only thing about it to mention is how annoying this lady is. But I kind of want to take this time to quickly appreciate the characterization of Ennard in this latest installment. I've always loved the way Ennard was depicted in the series. In the games, we don't really know much about them, and to be completely honest, they're kind of underused. But with the concepts and ideas we do know, somehow J-Gems managed to craft a unique and interesting character bursting at the seams with personality. Like, oh my gosh. In the earliest interview series episodes, they were always made as this giant threatening monster of a robot, something unnatural and creepy. But as the series continues, we got the pleasure of seeing their roles expand and change over time, starting as a creepy threat to Afton and turning into someone with motives, a backstory, and fears. As more and more episodes come out using the character, we as the audience notice the many different personas they took up. At one moment they're calm and collected, then the next they're screaming or yelling or making jokes. I feel like it's safe to assume that if you've made it this far in the video, you know the origins of Ennard in the games. A beast of mechanical parts that were taken apart and put back together from the Funtime animatronics, in hopes to look more human, and in turn fusing their personalities and minds with one another. But in this universe, it wasn't a choice. Going way back to the Remnant trials, we see the first test of Afton's killing spree and how they were brought into life in the simple robots. But unfortunately, through those tests, he discovered that large amounts of remnant was too much for only one mind to handle, deciding to instead stitch all of these initial tests together in one body, those being Ballora, Funtime Freddy, and Funtime Foxy. Baby isn't actually part of Innard in this universe, and trust me, we'll see more of her later, but like I was saying, this version of Innard was never wanting to be fused together like this, and we get this shown to us and expressed so heavily in this newest episode. When we cut back to Innard after what we left off, they're already jumping back and forth between personalities and even arguing with each other, which is admittedly very funny. Even as they get interviewed, we see this new kind of depiction of Innard switching back and forth, and it's a great parallel to the first interview of Innard episode. Look, yes, I still do praise that episode for being as eerie and well done as it was at that time, but I'm a much bigger fan of this kind of Innard. It's one that feels like what a being like this would actually act like, and I love that. But anyways, due to their annoying bickering, the lady gets tired of it all and electrocutes them to blacking out, only for when they wake up to find out Ballora is not responding. Whether this is because she's ignoring them, still blacked out, or just straight up dead, Funtime Freddy and Funtime Foxy agree they need to put their differences aside and find a way out of this facility, all on their own. One problem though, they're also crippled now. Yeah, I guess Ballora was their legs? I don't know. Wait a second, but if Innard was taken for interviewing, then where was Good Bloke taken? Well, he was actually taken to where Springtrap was taken, both locked in a room waiting for what's to come. In the meantime, talking about their situations and families, with Bloke even giving Springtrap a good amount of sass over his hypocrisy. I would show you, but go watch the show for yourself. I'm not your mom. Anyways, where were we? Oh, right, so their talk gets cut off unexpectedly as the doors open and Major in his giant robot suit steps out from the darkness, greeting them both, and takes them to a secret room he has. One that's full of Afton stuff and equipment. He goes on about how everything here was made with the same energy and he needs Afton to make it for him. But quick rant, he says this all while the screen is focused on the camera panel for Help Wanted. So that got me thinking, is like literally everything that Afton made in this universe made with Remnant? Like, it wasn't going over like a endo head or a part of a robotic, no, it was the camera panel. If so, how many people did this man straight up slaughter? And better question, is Bro's toaster haunted or something? Like, does he want to get revenge? Like, I'm so confused by this, but nonetheless, I digress. I digress. Afton reasonably asks why he'd even help him with all this, so Major gives him a bit of persuasion by showing him that he has what's left of Baby, what's left of Elizabeth. And to be honest, not only was this a crazy reveal, but it also was kind of a sad moment. We see how soft and slow Afton walks up to the robot, and with a face full of guilt too, and honestly it kinda makes you forget that he's the reason she died in the first place, which I think is really good. I honestly canonize this version of Springtrap in my own mind. This is a man who knows what he has done is wrong and has completely given up on caring about his own life now, regretting the actions he had done in the past, and really truly only cares about one thing, and that's his daughter. And in the middle of all this grief, he gave Major almost what he wanted. A piece of the puzzle. An energy translator that turns remnants into electrical currents. There's only one thing missing though. The fresh blood of a new victim. Major hears this and instantly, without thought or reason, commands Springtrap to use the device on Bloke. Reasonably, Bloke gets frightened by this and yelling at the Major, calling this psychotic as Springtrap gets closer and closer, only for him to turn around last minute and shoot a blinding bright blast at Major, helping him and Bloke escape while he's stunned. As Afton reaches out his metal hand toward him, we understand he still has some humanity left in his heart after all these years. And this just goes to show he has in fact changed, unlike what all the animatronics have been preaching. He wants to be better. But anyways, speaking of the animatronics, where are they? Well, all of them are actually currently huddled outside of the facility, getting ready for their plan to save Innard and Good Bloke. The Bonnies are going to ride a van and make a distraction in the front while everyone else breaks in the back and tries to get them. As the distraction commences and Toy Bonnie gets his first driving lesson, the others successfully break in and find Innard, who had wandered into the room with Circuit's baby and had sand, for some unknown reason, was frozen in place, whether by fear or anxiety, and unable to move. I would make a realistic depiction of a heart attack joke, but I generally think this is fascinating. Why did Innard freeze up and not the others? Do they know something? Or was it just Ballora coming back and seeing her daughter for the first time in a long time? Whatever it is, it's very intriguing. Nonetheless, they get picked up by Nightmare Chica and make it out to the roof, but oh no, the Major's up there, and look, this video and script is already long enough, and you already know what I'm going to say. Epic battle, amazing music and animation, stunning lighting as always. Oh, and also Toy Bonnie dies. Yeah. Luckily though, all the other animatronics escape, and so do Bloke and Springtrap as their own adventure. Ending the episode on that note. Wow. What a way to end it all. All these episodes all have such obvious passion put behind them, and seeing how the series and J-Gem's talent has grown and evolved over the years has been so fun and exciting. And I can't wait to see what happens in the future installments, because this series really does mean a lot to me. I know this show may not be for everyone, and heck, you may disagree with my point that it's better than the written story than the actual games, but you can't help but notice and appreciate its charm and clear love that's put into it. My man J-Gems put all of their sweat and tears into this stuff, and dang it, I respect that. If you're a fan of the series, I sincerely hope you enjoyed listening to me rant about it for like 15 minutes. And if you're not a fan of the series and you haven't seen anything, not only are your days numbered, but I highly recommend sticking around with what's to come. There's going to be so much more, and I can't wait. Thank you for watching. Bye.